Before we get into today's episode, I've created a short questionnaire that will help me get to know you better. Those that fill out the questionnaire will get entered into a draw to win an Amazon gift card. So there's a link in the description for the episode. Click it, fill out the questionnaire, and I look forward to hearing your feedback. Now for today's episode. This is the Michael Brian Show. Hi everyone, welcome back to the show. And today I'm joined with Bill Aguado, who is the former executive director of the Bronx Council over in the States. And he's also one of the people that manage En Foco, which essentially brings the arts to the community. Everyone from the can't think of the word now, from unprivileged communities and varied backgrounds as well. So, Bill, thanks so much for joining me today.
And thank you so much, and welcome to the Bronx.
Welcome to the Bronx. Nice. So I'd be curious about how you actually got into this, because arts is something that I imagine loads of people have their own individual story of how they got into it. So what was yours?
Well, I started working at the Bronx Council on the Arts actually as a way to get a. I realized that the impact and the success I wanted to empower my efforts with others, empower the community against the corrupt politicians that existed in the Bronx at the time, was not going to work. And it was, I mean, it was a real disappointment. Coming out of the 60s, one could organize, and we all played our part in ending the war in Vietnam, and then with Nixon, the President Nixon, he was impeached and he resigned. I decided I needed something else for the time being, some sort of interim thing. And I have to say, no matter what kind of work I ever did, I always had the arts involved. And arts was a way to communicate with people, and arts was a way to educate students, and arts was a way to provide a voice. I was able to provide a voice for artists, and to me that was the most critical value to me. Artists need voices. Artists need to be supported. I made it a point in my life. Whoever I hire, whoever I commission, whoever I engage, you know what you have to do it. All I ask in return, if there is going to be a problem, I want to know. I want to be the first to know. So I took this job. I figured at the Bronx Council on the Arts. It was charged with serving the artists and communities and arts organizations of the Bronx. And you can imagine back in the late 70s, when I started working at the Bronx Council on the Arts, there was a beginning of fires in the South Bronx and all the devastation that existed in the various communities. But one thing that remained constant was that the arts survived and the arts remain in the community. And the arts, by that I mean not just the visual arts. I'm talking about music. Music captured the souls of the people who stayed, did not leave the Bronx, and fought for its survival, fought for its to create strong communities, and that became quite apparent to me that artists with their voices. Now, whether there's formal arts, like nonprofit organizations, theater groups, or chamber music, or dance companies, or galleries, and informal arts, which happens in communities and in buildings and community centers, public spaces. The two of them, in my estimation, have equal value. And I enjoyed, I was always in the community. I was a community organizer for an educator and community organizer before I came to the Bronx Council on the Arts. So it was And I enjoyed being out in the streets with the artists. You know, and I ran a grants program for the arts organizations and community groups. So to me, it was, and I would visit each applicant, and to go in the summer, to go on the rooftop of a building to observe a Latin jazz band practicing on the roof at midnight. You know, these are guys that came out of work at 6, 7, 8 o'clock. You know, not only was it an emotional release practicing, but it was also a creative release.
Yeah.
You know, it just, you know, that left such an imprint. You know, art is going to be created no matter what and by whom. So how do I level the playing field? How do I enable groups, community groups, garden groups, choirs, gospel groups to feel empowered that they can apply for a grant, that they can, you know, applying for a grant is the amount of money that we gave out was not that significant. We were talking about the early '80s. I had $40,000 to give out to a borough of 1.2 million, which at the time was like the sixth or seventh, eighth largest city if it was the Bronx was the Bronx. But the affirmation of a panel deciding who gets funded and the group that's funded, they may not be an arts group, but they have strong cultural programming, strong arts. And the soul was the arts and they didn't know anything about funding for the arts. For them to receive that affirmation, to be affirmed that the quality that you're producing merit support and was equal to some of the other arts organizations. That's important for a community. That's important for a group of people, that what they do is important. Eventually, in the early '80s, the executive director relocated to Los Angeles, California, and he recommended strongly that I would become the executive director of the Bronx Council on the Arts. And that's the last thing I wanted, was to manage an organization. And I was having so much fun. I was single. I didn't need a lot. You know, I was observing a lot of art. I was hanging out with artists. We had these. We would meet and discuss issues, and it was just a superb experience for me. But the board kept on insisting, and I kept on rejecting it. And finally, I agreed. I would be the acting executive director, and I would find someone to replace me. As I managed the Bronx Council of the Arts, I also said I would look for someone. Well, it took me 30 years before I found someone to replace me. And I retired, and I think it was about 2010. It was an incredible, spiritual, soulful experience, meeting artists, working with artists. And again, another lesson I learned early on is hire artists to work in your staff. Hire intelligent artists, hire intelligent people, because for me, it's important to learn. And if I'm smarter than you, then I'm wasting my time. I need to be taught. So I had artists who had defined define the policies and programming of the shape of the Bronx Council of the Arts. And again, I can create a program, but you add that nuance, that touch, and it made a difference. And at the same time, I opened up artist studios that were largely largely supported by grants, so the cost of the artists was very, very minimal. And two of the artists back then in the mid '80s uh, un, are well known, and one is Pepon Osorio, who's a full professor at Temple, and he's known all over the world, a Puerto Rican installation artist. He does a lot of media work, and he was one of the artists. And another one is Michael Kelly Williams, a sculptor, a painter, a printmaker. One of the leading um, then and now African American artists, and I'm still close friends with them, and I, I seek out their advice, their counsel when as needed. Uh, I learned so much about perspective, not just putting a project, a design project on paper, but talk to them and see how it and shape it in such a way that the voice of the artist is included and it reaches the intended audience. Again, at the very beginning, I made sure that we provided a fellowship program for artists at the Bronx Council on the Arts. And that same philosophy carried over to this day as executive director of En Foco, which I took over about 6-7 years ago. And I did it as a pro bono. And I will get to that shortly. Then we had created the Longwood Gallery, which is still in existence and became internationally known. And the curator, director, Fred Wilson, who was representing the United States at the Venice Biennale in 2003. God, was that long? It's almost 20 years now. Time goes by so quickly.
It does.
And, and all of a sudden, I have these tremendous artists all working for me, all advising me, all, I was sitting there, have wine or in my case, scotch, it was just a release for me. And I felt so honored that that all the artists that we have supported over the years with studios and grants and fellowships at the Bronx Council of the Arts, many of them just needed the opportunity. They didn't, I said, don't ask me for my opinion. This is your work, do it. And then from time to time, an artist would be out of work and was, and someone that I knew and respected, and it was tough times. I would hire them as a consultant. But what should I do? Create and don't annoy me. That's all you gotta do. Just
I actually wonder what it takes to actually create an opportunity for someone. So let's say someone comes to you, they've got a talent, maybe they're very creative, it's a bit unique in what they do. But as you said, these people are struggling with opportunities. So if someone was coming to was in that situation, what do you do? Like where, because if they're looking, they're trying, I'm guessing. They're trying to find these opportunities, but they're just not there. Is it something that you know that they don't know? Do you have connections in certain places? Where do you go for opportunities for the artists?
yeah. Well, it depends on the resources that I have available. My office, my door, my phone, my Zoom is always available to artists. Uh, and there was a young musician uh, who had created a brass quintet playing classical music from Puerto Rico, the music of Rafael Hernandez. And he says, "You think that's fundable?" My God, Rafael Hernandez is one of the great composers of the Caribbean. And I've traveled to Mexico, Cuba, and certainly Puerto Rico, where my roots are, and everyone has claimed Rafael Hernandez is theirs. And this young man said, I've arranged it for a brass quintet. You think it could? And I looked at him and said, here's the application. Put it down on paper. Uh, let's talk. Let's see what you want. Let's see, and the and sometimes the weight of trying to maintain a quintet, a quartet, and trying to find gigs and put food on the table for you. Your wife is helping. All this, you know, some not many get out of that rut. Some are overwhelmed and, and can't move forward. Others plan in a very safe, quiet way and build quietly. It takes small steps. He eventually stopped performing, and I was very disappointed. I wanted him to continue. I would say, listen, I could ask and make sure you get 2 or 3 gigs, during the holiday season. You bring it back together, and I want that spirit that you brought to me to continue. And sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it's not everyone is going to succeed. Not everyone is going to be hit the big time. And it's when you hit the big time, when you're known internationally, when you become the media darling, when you become the flavor of the cultural flavor of the month, which is usually the case for Latinos, African Americans. We become the flavor of the month. Or we only can bring one, and we'll support one. But that's bullshit. I don't tolerate that. But what's important is that you're there to listen, and all I can do is, if I can open up doors, I will. And I certainly have opened up doors over the years. But the best thing I do is listen, and we talk. And this is, the norm of the artists who are out there cross discipline is very high excellence. Being an excellent, talented artist doesn't mean you're going to succeed in terms of the market. And hopefully, you stay with it and certainly have some measure of success as you get older without being, it's the level of quality is very high for the most part. Then you have some artists who are lucky and don't have the talent, but just zoom up that cultural ladder and become the darling of the world. So my long answer, in one phrase is, I listen. Sometimes I hold their hands. Sometimes I open the doors. Sometimes you succeed. I just have this young woman who told me that she has been appointed to George Mason University. She had a tenured position. And the last time I saw her was in a restaurant. One of the worst waitresses I had ever come across. She only had one mandate, not to mess up. That was my martini. Do not spill the martini. You can spill the fries, you can spill the burger, you can do whatever. Do not mess with the martini. And and coincidentally, I was having dinner with my wife, and I get a phone call from the search firm who wanted to interview. What did I think of her? Now, of course, I gave her a glowing. I mean, she was a brilliant artist. She is a brilliant artist, and is a performance artist. Is a photographer. Is a media artist. She is a Puerto Rican woman. She's a Latina. You have to work 3 times as hard to move forward, especially and not just because she's a Latina, but because she's a woman. Opportunities for women are very, there's still a level of discrimination against women, especially if you're Latino or Black. That is a given. You know, who's ever in charge, they define the culture of the organization, of the museum, and that and it's that it's that culture that they represent will be the policy and programming of the institution. But it was always, she struggled hard, and I appreciated it, and I enjoyed her work, and to this day, she calls me Theo in Spanish, uncle, or calls me Godfather, and you know, and you know, it's just a pleasure to see someone succeed, and I just step back, let it happen. With Fred Wilson, I step back, let it happen. But Bongo Sodio, step back, let it happen. Wanda Raimondi, that's the one I was talking about. I just step back. These are great people, great human beings, as well as fine artists.
Yeah.
I retired, and I won't go through 30 years because, my goodness. But to say that Bronx Council and the Longwood Arts Gallery has the reputation of serving artists, of being the forefront, of addressing issues, whether it's gender issues, whether it's ethnic issues, whether it's racial issues. We were first at the Longwood Arts Gallery. We were, and certainly we have pissed off a lot of people. The cultural attaché of the Russian embassy in Manhattan wrote this scorching letter to the Department of State, and the Department of State is calling me. I said, leave me alone. At the same time, the conservative right wing of the Republican Party was attacking me. They're both attacking me on the same issue, but one was communist and one was right wing. And it's so nice when two different entities defined by politics and really did not like each other attack me. God, I'm annoying the whole world. And what's great about that? People are listening and we're talking. And that's what's important. We are listening. They are listening. We touched the nerve, and the nerve was, it was the title of the exhibit, Evil Empire. Russia thought it was them. The conservative right wing thought it was about the United States, and how the mirror that they looked into was the mirror, their political mirror that they interpreted, Evil Empire. And each one felt it was about them. Now, when you generate that type of response from two different, absolute, from one, so politically different, it's what are they worried about? What is evil empire? What's their conscience telling them? It's that to me was a fascinating experience. It's it really is how two words, evil empire, how it was so misinterpreted.
It's almost like the interpretation is almost like what the art leads to. It's almost like the value of art is in its interpretation, almost like the beauty is in the beholder kind of thing.
Absolutely.
It makes me wonder what your thoughts are on what value of art actually is. as simple as that? Does it make you think? Does it make you interpret things, make you see the world a particular way, or is there more to it?
Well, you know, I have collected art uh, the last 30 years or so. And I asked advice of this curator that I know well, and he told me, buy art, buy what stimulates you, buy what's emotional for you. And the bulk of my work, 80% of the work that I have, is based on buying that emotion. The remaining 20% is, sometimes an artist needs some money. So I'll buy one of their pieces, you know, and then they're not expensive. Again, it's another way that I can affirm their commitment to the arts, that firm. So I do. I know what I prefer. I know what moves me. I know how I respond to work. I mean, the truth of the matter is, about 90% of all the professional arts out there, it's actually pretty dreadful. It's, uh, not that it's bad. It's just, it's I've seen better. I know of artists, for as many artists that are up there as 100 times, 1,000 times more artists who should be up there. So I, whether I like the work or not, I support it. Whether I like, I am committed to what the values and position that they represent, and I support it. I don't have to like it, but I need to support it. You can't just, what's the phrase that I've used over the years? You just can't like the creative process a little bit. Either you support it 100% or not. And that's been my basic philosophy. And when I took over, I came to En Foco because I knew of them. I knew them from the mid-70s. And they were, it's a photography organization. Back in the 70s, it was a Puerto Rican photographers group. It was a collective. It was not created to become an organization. It was created to provide opportunities, exhibition opportunities for a community that had very little option in the mainstream world, in the mainstream contemporary world. The three founders were extraordinary photographers, very gifted, and you had a number of artists who were also a part of that group. And the idea that they could talk to each other and find comfort and understanding of what each other's values were was really it's what helped to create who we are today. That collective spirit still remains with us. We're now an organization, have been an organization. That transition from a collective to the reality, you look in the mirror and say, we're no longer a collective. We are an organization. And we have a broader appeal. That's what, and I, and I was part of that universe as a funder and as a friend. And I was able to observe it, and I was able to support it wherever possible. We for support for organizations always through a competitive process, and I never the panel of peers would decide the money that goes out. I never adjudicated funding. I always step back. That's not my job. That's the one thing I want is a commitment to quality. And not only does the panel provide that endorsement, but also has recommendations, as well as perspectives that every organization should listen to. So, that's how I knew En Foco. They had hit on tough times. The executive director did not return from a leave. The board of directors walked out, and it has a legacy. And too many organizations, too many arts organizations, when they go out of business, and should they go out of business, and it's a very it's a Darwinian type of life out there. The strong survive and those go out of it. But what about their history? Who's going to remember their contributions? Who's going to remember the work of the artists that were part of it? And generally, when a small group goes out of business like that brass quintet, who knows about them? Am I the only one who knows? That's 50 years ago, 40 years ago. So how do we preserve our legacies, our histories? And I've been troubled by that, as the fact that the Latino population was always treated as a second-class citizen. How do we preserve our histories that are meaningful? And I made it a point that En Foco will be, on some level, will be preserved. Some level, our archives and collection will rest somewhere. I didn't know how, I didn't know where, and I certainly, when I came out of retirement, I took this job as the head of the head of En Foco on a pro bono level. I'm still pro bono, and people think it's very generous of me, and I said, my God, as a retired person, what the hell am I going to do at home?
Yeah, yeah.
These, go on trips. I don't want to go on trips, and I asked my wife if she mind if I went into the office 2 or 3 days a week, or committed 2 or 3 days a week to see what I can do. And she said, fine. I think she was happy to get me out of the apartment,
Funny. Yeah.
Go, I'll drive you. Don't worry, I'll drive you. And again, the first thing I did was initiate an artist support program. We've been giving out fellowships since 2016. We're now in our 8th year, and we've given out 75 already. The first year was 5. The rest have been 10 awards, $1,000 a piece. And to me, that showed how much we value the artists, and how important it is for us to support the artists. And we have our publication, We're Loose. Again, I devoted. I had to raise the money. It wasn't easy. The fact that I didn't have to pay my salary meant that this organization could stay afloat.
Yeah.
A lot of times it suffers from the weight of the administrative costs to keep it afloat. So instead of supporting the mission that was initially created for the organization, many organizations now raise money for the administrative end, for the executive director, for the fundraiser, for the bookkeeper. You know what I'm saying? Who needs that? That kills our community's arts. That kills it all, because we exist at the largesse of funders. Now, I know that the magazine will always be supported, and the fellowships are privately supported. So if I just keep those two, En Foco will always exist. And that to me that tells me that we can continue. And it just, I don't want to be an organization, so we have part-time people. Everyone's a part-time. And we've managed to make them, and this is about 2 years. And, part of my coming back was to provide professional programming. And we were in serious debt. And I wanted to pay off the debt. I wanted to find out, put our archives and collection in a safe place, in a library or someplace. And I wanted to, if we were going to close, I wanted to close with dignity, walk out the front door. And Foco is an important name. Not sneak out the back way, and run from all the creditors. That's not how I do business. And we have grown so much since that 6 years ago. And, I was able to, we received a grant, so we were able to hire a managing director who will eventually take over as the executive director. We have very loyal staff, very efficient staff, very professional staff. And, there's something about being small where we can have fun and create. It's not about bigness, And Foco is more of a state of mind. It's not bricks and mortar, it's a state of mind. Our value, our power is in how people perceive us. And that's what's important to me. I don't need to build a building. We don't have to support an executive director. We have funding a 3-year grant from the Mellon Foundation that supports the managing director. And when he becomes executive director, you have 2 years left, and then the funding is up to him. At age, so Bill, you're gonna be part of a 5-year plan. So I'm 76. I have a 5-minute plan. Can I make it for the next 5 minutes? Fine. 5-year plan. Forget it. It's not gonna happen. And again, the source of inspiration has been its legacy, its history. And as we investigate what was in storage, and I have 2 archivists working on it, and it's all being digitized. Nueva Luz, the magazine, and people have commented to me, not only is your quality production, the fact that you've been in this, it's been published since 1985 is rare for an art magazine, and it's rare for an organization and a publication that represents artists of color. And that's and we have digitized all 70 plus copies, and they're part of our archives. And in early 2023, we'll have the Nueva Luz, which is the name of the Publication Study Center. It's over 400 artists and cultural writers who have participated over the years. That in and of itself is a slice of history of individuals who were not part of the formula, who were not part of the mainstream, started with us. There are several artists have won. Many of our artists have received many awards, have high recognition. Some in academia, Some are department heads, chairs of departments. Some are full assistant associate professors. And, and some are just working artists. But the beginnings are with us. When the museum decides that Dawood Bey is we are going to collect him, you go back to our Revolution publication, volume 1, number 2, and you see his work in 1985. And last year he had a solo show at the Whitney Museum. We have his work. We knew the challenges he had back then. Museums may collect the work and may produce exhibits, but the reality is we have evidence that he started with us, a young artist, an artist with a vision, an artist who didn't know if he was going to succeed or not. That's in our collection. That's the legacy that I need to preserve. 2 years into En Foco, I had an intern from one of the universities. He said, "Bill, do you mind if I go to the storage and just to assess what you have in terms of the magazines and come back with a report?" And we have college interns. Sometimes they can be a real pain in the butt. Sending her to storage, you don't have to come back. Stay there. She came back, always a brilliant woman. I mean, and her name is, first name is Claire. Her last name will come to me at some point. Anyway, she came back with this inventory. And it was the big bang moment for me at En Foco. Wow. These are 300 plus artists, 40 plus writers, essayists. Wow, look at these names. I knew it. I knew about the collections, the archives emotionally. I knew it here. I talked to people about it. I helped support it. But I never realized the value of Nueva Luz. In and of itself, that publication, the work that it has, those artists who were presented in that publication, to me, is the best resource we could have. And I'm working hard to find a home for the permanent collection, the artworks and slides and the ephemera. But the digital part of it will always remain part of En Foco. We may partner with someone, but we will have editorial final say in what goes into Nueva Luz. That, to me, is what's most important, the freedom to represent our community as we see fit. So that was that big bang, and I've been raising money for the archives, for the collection. We are developing programs based on Nueva Luz. We have commissioned one artist as a pilot to investigate the Nueva Luz archives, the public. What jumps out at you? What would you create? And if we're funded by the National Endowment for the Arts, we may do 5 more commissions, and not just limited to Latinos, African Americans, or Asian Americans, or Native Americans, artists or curators, open to everyone, because I want the world to see what we have, and use and investigate and use it to create. I also want curators from mainstream institutions to realize these are the artists we have. I want you to know who we have. I don't want to hear from anyone that says, I don't know where to find artists who are Latino or Black. And my answer to them is this: the study center makes it available. We have a professor from one of the most prestigious universities in New England that in her creative writing class, it's focused on community issues, social issues. She will direct them to the Nueva Luz publications that you can access. Every publication is available to be accessed on our website, and it's no cost. And it's enfoco.org, www.enfoco.org. Use it. See what's there. See what stimulates you. And it will be organized in a way as part of the study center. So you have a listing of what the artists are and what issues they are and that they're in, and some of the themes of the issues. It's extraordinary. It's just all of a sudden when Claire Dorfman came back with that inventory was the big bang moment for En Foco. We were alive. We have a purpose. Our purpose is to preserve our legacy and use our legacy, because that legacy grows every year with the artists we work with, the fellowships that we give out. So our legacy need is an important one, and it will be preserved, and the public will have access to it. We have nothing to be embarrassed about. This is who we are at no cost. You can buy the publication, or you can go online and read it. Thanks. I can't think of anything better that we could do at this point in the life of En Foco. I think the fact that I, as the executive director, do not have to raise my salary. I can toy around with how do we preserve our legacy, and how do we use that legacy to create new works, to get more people involved, and at the same time supporting contemporary efforts for artists in our community. So it's been a very rewarding experience for me. I realized that at my age, I'll be less involved. No doubt I'll be just as vocal, I can't imagine anyone ever shutting me up, so. Yeah.
I'm actually really curious about yourself as a collector, whether you have any arts that you would say were unusual. Maybe you've had to justify buying it in some kind of cocktail bar or a pub somewhere with your friends, and they realize you have one, and they start asking you questions as to why you bought it. Do you have anything like that that's unusual, something that maybe have had to explain why you have it?
No, it's actually it's you know I do it quietly. I don't. I mean, I don't boast about it. That well, I'm supporting the arts. I bought this artist collection. I bought this, and then and my wife also buys art. So they're between the two. This is not high end. It's known artists at the beginning, but I certainly don't have any $50,000 pieces or $100,000 pieces or $10,000 pieces, for that matter. I do have some quality work that no one will ever know that it exists. I will donate the work, or I will auction the work off so that to benefit En Foco. My wife has instructions that if I pass on, this is what she's to do. I mean, she can have it for as long as she wants, but ultimately, it's to be used to support artists of En Foco, artists, and she knows the type of artists that I've been close to over the years, and the work that they produce, whether it's choreographers or poets, or, or printmakers. I stay away from large sculptures. I live in an apartment in New York City. You know, it's only just so much wall space, and I have quite a few work up, and I have a lot in storage. But it's the apartment that we're in for the first 8, 10 years. We didn't have a television. My evening was reading and looking at my art. It was good. I still look at it and say, "Damn, it's good stuff, man." You know, and it still resonates. It's and there are people who would tell me I don't like it. Yes, oh, it's not yours, and you're not in my apartment. I enjoy it, plain and simple. It's I enjoy the art that I have. I look at it. I appreciate it. It's not it's not something that I showcase to the world. You know, sometimes over the years, I've had a few holiday cocktail parties, and you know, I invite artists, friends. We have a great time, but I don't. They see the art, they say, it's nice. Oh, they most times they know the artist, so it's cool. I'm not here to boast about it. I'm here to enjoy it. That's in the moments out there when I'm, working or my wife and I are walking. I don't do much walking anymore, but I love trees. I love trees, and sometimes you can feel their vibe. You know, there's a park in in the North Bronx, and and that we go to quite a bit. Well, my wife is still a walker. She does the trails in this park. I have a walker, so I can't do much. So I park my butt between these two trees. And my God, in the last couple of years, I know they're talking to each other, and I know they're trying to talk to me. I mean, the energy that between these two trees, it's just, I feel it, I mean, we're all part of the community of life. That's that's what we're members of. So I got my buddies, the trees, I can bring a little bottle of wine. I open it, and I know that the trees will not drink it. They have their own moisture. I have my own moisture. It's wonderful.
I wonder what your
I'm
thoughts would
sorry.
be for. It's all right. I wonder what your thoughts would be for artists that maybe want to make it. Maybe they want to do more with their art, want to leave a legacy similar to yourself. What advice would you have to an artist that maybe was coming up and they wanted to achieve more with what they do?
Well, first of all, they have to document what they have. And that's the weakness of many, many artists. You have to digitize it. So you have a record of it and have a complete record. Date when it was done, and shows, exhibits, this piece or that piece has been in. And you want to have a record of it. And then you want to organize. Artists think that if I just digitize it, that is sufficient. You have to organize theme base uh, by dates, by or if you travel somewhere, so that curators or others who may be interested in your work or want to be able to dispose of your work in a proper place in a museum or a library. It's better to have your work organized, and so I think that's a priority. Again, how do you do it? And that's an issue, that's a project that I'm trying to develop now. Uh, There are projects like that for visual artists, uh, but for this foundation, but photography does not fit into the foundation's guidelines. So I'm exploring how we can do this, either as a training or to uh, help artists de- de- develop the work themselves. And the thought that I had about that was that there's some artists who have documented all their work. Everything is nicely organized. And so, one of them is George Malavé, is a wonderful photographer from the early days of En Foco. I said, George, where does it go? Who knows about it? Here we have 5,000 Latino artists, Puerto Rican artists, photographers, and they all have, the work is digitized and organized. Who knows about it? How do we? And one of the thoughts I have is to, and I haven't told this to anyone yet. You hear that, Carousel? I haven't told this to anyone yet. Uh, how do I create? Because I need to raise the money for someone to manage it, but that artists who have their work digitized and organized, they can link it to our website, to our archives. And we have nothing to do with their work other than there's a link to their work, and there'll be a list of artists. This way, people will know that it exists somewhere. And by being listed with us, there's a better chance that others will recognize it and be of interest. This is all about preserving legacies. We're not going to manage it. It'll be self-managed, and know what you have to do. Don't ask us for money because we don't have money. We're broke. Not broke, but we're able to survive. But this is how do we put this together? That is my next project as I begin to phase myself out of the day-to-day management of En Foco. And I think this will be a service, an incredible service to artists. At the very least, a training program for artists in our community, how to preserve their work, how to record your work, how to digitize your work, how do you, and the quality of it. It's just not scanning it, but how do the quality of the scan? Does it really do justice to your image? Are there enough pixels? And I'm talking like as if I know what I'm doing. I have no idea about the computer. You know what I use? I use an iPad because many years ago at the Bronx Council in New York, they say, boss, if you ever touch a computer again, we're all going to walk out. You're toxic to technology. So don't. And if I have issues with, access, I call people in the office. I call my staff. How do you do this? How do you manage this? And they're so happy that I'm as distant as I could possibly be. But that's, that is my thinking. Again, it's a challenge, but not only have we preserved our legacy and Foco's legacy, now let's look to see who's out there. And they're not part of collections. They haven't made any real major plans. This could be a service that we offer people.
Well, that's a fantastic way to do it. It is. It's a fantastic way to help artists in a way. And the reason why I think it's important is so many people want to do so much that they can leave behind. So maybe it's the mark that they want to leave. They just want something to stick around that outlives them a
Yep.
lot of the time. And some people want statues, some people want businesses, companies, artists, for the most part, just want their art to last. Just they just want it to be somewhere that stays there and it just doesn't go away. And I like how by preserving other artists' legacies, you're able to preserve your own. And I think it's a very, very generous way of doing it. There's a lot to be said for artists that do just fade away, they just disappear. And hopefully, through the work that you guys do, less of those will actually fade away and a lot more will stick around. So you mentioned En Foco before. Is there any other ask that you have of the audience? Is there anything that you would like people to check out? Now's your chance.
Just visit our website. You'll see exhibits that we've done, and 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 the way we present the exhibits is online. It is like a gallery. It's not flat. There are, there's a special program we release to present art, and that's one level. We have each and every Neverloose issue, and like right now we have the fellowship initiative is open to artists, photographers living in New York City and New York State, and the deadline is Monday, November 11th. And then we have a Media Arts Fund, but the deadline will be sometime in mid-December, I think. So and we don't want to overwhelm you with information, but this is, there's enough there for anybody to look at and read. And I've been told very frequently that by strangers, that they like to go to our website, and and that they catch up on just reading the magazines or just looking at the pictures, as I do, So, uh, it's I devoted 6, 7 years at En Foco, but I've known En Foco since the mid '70s, and I was very supportive through my organization in terms of funding. So throughout if you look at the files and the ephemera, you'll see my name as a funder of En Foco as you move forward from 1980s to 2016. You see my name. Then from 2016 forward, you see my name as an applicant. So that whole my history, it can be easily tracked as executive director of Bronx Council on the Arts, and then to the executive director as En Foco. But the advice I give people: support your local artists.
Thanks so much for being a guest on the show. Those that are listening, feel free to subscribe, share the show, tell others, and also leave a review wherever you are listening into your podcasts. Bill, thanks so much. I look forward to keeping in touch.
Michael, I thank you so much. I hope I didn't talk too much.